So in essence, one of the things that comes up in the conversation with Luenelle and Iyanla is that, you know, there has definitely been a passing down of her unhealed places and her unhealed wounds to Danielle, her daughter. And this is represented in her masks that she wears. So Iyanla has these different masks that have different names on them. And, you know, hurt, dismissiveness, potty mouth, whatever was on there. And they show up in these ways, but these are not who she is. But these are what stand in the way of her showing up as her authentic self as long as these things remain unprocessed, unhealed, and undealt with. So I thought, and that's what happened in the conversation with Iyanla and Luenelle. I think, in the daughter story, what really just shows up is, what's very typical. It's a typical parent child relationship, I would say, or typical child kind of child parent dynamic where children are unseen, feel unheard, and when the parent is working a lot, they feel as if they are abandoned. If the parent is working away a lot, they feel abandoned. I think, as much as people will say Hollywood mothers or Hollywood parents, I don't think this whole sense of children feeling abandoned by parents who were off at work all the time and putting their work before everything else is unique to Hollywood. It's not unique to Hollywood. It's not unique to people's lives that are in the limelight or in the entertainment industry. This happens to children of lawyers, children of DAs, children of teachers, children. It happens. There's a part in parents' lives where people, it's almost like they don't prioritize a level of holisticness, a level of balance, to a point where something has to give, and it's not the career, it's not the job. What gives is your children. And that's what Luenelle eventually says, is that Danielle came before everybody except for her job. For me, I don't feel like this is a unique situation to your parent is an entertainer and therefore you're going to have this problem. I think a lot of parents just in regular jobs are doing this. They're abandoning their children, latchkey children, or children who always have their own key and let themselves back in from being at school the whole day, and they come home and there's no one there and they have to take care of themselves after school until the parent returns home. It's not unique to Hollywood parents. And so I don't want us to watch this episode and think, oh, okay, Hollywood problems, Hollywood parent things. That's why I'm never going to Hollywood. No, it's not a unique story to Hollywood parents. The dynamic is not a unique to entertainers dynamic and in relation with their children. This happens with a lot of parents. Now, as usual, in the healing process, there is the segment where Iyanla meets with both women, meets with Luenelle and Danielle, the daughter. And now the daughter has to, relay her grievances to her mother. And again, this episode, Iyanla does give what she in this particular episode calls a hall pass to say exactly what she would like to say to her mother about how she experienced her mother. So the phrase, I like the phrases that I experienced you as, or growing up, I experienced you as, and it made me feel this way. And again, relaying and sharing grievances so that the mother can be accountable for her failures and the moments where she failed her daughter in bringing her up and trying to do the best she could with what she had for her daughter. And I like that Iyanla gives a whole pass, to the children to be able to say this. And also, requires the parents not to just respond to take over the situation, but also requires the parents to mirror back what they've heard said is the experience of their children, so that the children can know that they've been heard and they're not being dismissed. So I experienced you in this way and it made me feel this way. What do you hear, Mom? Well, I hear that you experienced me in this way and it made you feel a certain way. And then when that is clear and the parent has had time to absorb and hear, probably for the first time, without trying to take authoritarian, ownership of the dynamic of the conversation, then comes the apology, because the accountability has been taken, the words, the grievance has been acknowledged, the failure has been admitted to. And and I believe that that's the kind of thing that allows you as a person to let things go quicker and undo the unforgiveness quicker and get to a point of forgiveness. And so that very same process was followed here. Again, like I say, I don't review to give you a blow by blow of what happened because we all watched. I review to reflect on things I had thoughts about and revelations about and want to reflect about as I watched the episode. Also, there is a sense in the apology kind of part of the process of this healing process where I like what Iyanla said. She said, you realize that you cannot, realize that you cannot make up for what was lost. You cannot make up for the hurt you caused. But now you've acknowledged it, now you've heard her, and now you've apologized. Now you've been held accountable. What is important now to be fully present in the right now and going forward. And I think that that's very important to kind of remember in these healing processes. Is sometimes parents try to then make up thereafter and try to, I don't know, pour all this love on you to try and make up. You can't make up. You did it. It's done. You did it. All that's required before we can go on in a healed manner is that you take ownership and are accountable for what you did and apologize for what you did, and then start on a new slate, a brand new relationship where people show up authentically as who they are. People show up masks off and not as roles, but as really who they are. And I think that's important. There seem to be, it's interesting because parents are faced with a lot of decisions to make in terms of like work and balancing being there for their children. There's a lot of guilt and shame around that. And I think one of the things that really came up here is that when you communicate clearly with your children and not make decisions that make sense and are logical to you as a solution to what the issue is, when you communicate with your children, say, I'm taking you to your grandmother, and I'm taking you to your grandmother and uncle so that they can, or your grandmother and father, so that they can bring you up while I'm on the road. And when I come off the road, I'll come see you. Every time that I have an opportunity to come off the road, I'll come see you. But being on the road is not conducive for you. You won't be able to go to school. You won't be able to focus. I have to focus on work because it's a job. So you aren't able to come to the job with me. So I'm going to leave you here in the safe hands. And if something unsafe happens, let me know. But I'm going to leave you in the safe hands. I'm going to call you. I'm going to communicate with you while I'm gone. And then I'm going to come back every chance that I get. That's the reason you're being left here while I go off to California and I leave you in Oakland. And I think for Danielle, that was not clear why she was now being left off over here and her mom is going over to California and not moving with her. And when that was clearly kind of explained by Luenelle, it was like, oh, if you had explained it to me that way, I would have gotten it. And I thought that was interesting because a lot of parents are making decisions, and not taking the time to then go down to the level of their children and say, I'm making this decision because of this logic. And as a result of this decision, we can expect this certain kind of outcome, and it is the best decision for right now because these are the options we have for right now. And I think that's very important to really understand that children have capacity to, if children have the capacity to feel abandoned, they have the capacity to understand something that's being explained to them at the level of understanding that they're able to understand in their mind, in their child mind. So I think it's important to take that time out as a parent to just, explain your moves as a parent, to explain your moves and to not take for granted that, well, yes, they came into my life and they're children, they're younger than me, so I take the lead and they follow me, and I don't have to explain anything to me. I think it's very healthy to explain things to children so that they're able to buy into your vision, they're able to buy into your dream. And so when they're helping you pack, which is one of the things that came up, there's that the way that she felt like she was supporting her mother was helping her mother pack and making sure that she passes at school and being grateful that her mother paid for her school fees. But she always felt like it was a hard thing for her to do, to help her mother pack, because she felt like she was being left again, because that clear conversation at the child's level of maturity and understanding was not had between the mother and the child. Going back to the hall pass, I think again it's very important because to have a hall pass, which is permission to tell the truth to your parent, as well as to have a facilitator facilitating the healing process, because parents, when you are trying to have an honest conversation with them, they will chalk it up to dishonor and being disrespectful. When you're trying to have a honest conversation with them about the pain that they've caused you, that they are responsible for, they will chalk it up to dishonor and being disrespectful. Instead of understanding that you're trying to start a dialogue and a conversation. They'll always go to you being disrespectful, you're dishonoring your parent. Don't come to me talking to me about how I failed you. Don't come to me talking about what grievances you have with me. And so I think it's important to have, in that healing conversation, in the healing process, to have a facilitator, as well as to have that hall pass, that permission to be able to say exactly what you want and need to say, to relay how the kind of pain that the parent caused. Lastly, I will go back to when Luenelle was meeting with Iyanla and just sharing her story before it was now going to be Luenelle sharing her story. Luenelle was placed in a room, and it was a waiting room, and she was left there to wait while Iyanla was doing the work with Luenelle, and then was going to get back to Luenelle. Luenelle started to have a breakdown and that showed me she kind of started to have some kind of breakdown, some kind of, get me out of here. How dare you, leave me to just sit here and no one is attending to me. But she's left in a nice waiting room with a blanket and, okay, we're dealing with your daughter now, so you sit here and wait while we're having the conversation with the daughter. And what came up for me is that even in that instance, when in the middle of a healing process, she was still, because she was so used to being in a position of control over her daughter and controlling the dynamic between her and her daughter. Even in that instance, she was controlling the dynamic between her and her daughter. And as if to say, why is someone talking to my daughter as an adult? She's 24, Luenelle is 24. It's almost like she was taking control of the situation, saying, why is someone talking to my daughter? And I'm not there to control the conversation. And because that's my child, and no one should be having, a conversation with my daughter, and I'm not there. that dynamic of ownership of your child and control of your child came out while she was left there. And Iyanla was now starting with Luenelle to have the conversation with her about what her story is and her experience has been of her mother up until then. And I thought that was interesting and also very reflective of their dynamic and their conversation, that it's very much controlled by the mother, and or the parents like to control the dynamic, and they have this sense of ownership and a right to ownership of their children as a means of controlling their children and controlling the narrative around their children in relation to themselves, so that they can always upkeep the perspective of, I did the best I did for you, I was a good parent to you, the image of the successes and not the image of the failures. So again, I feel like this episode was very similar to last week's episode. Different family, different stories, of course, but the themes are very similar. And they could have gone different directions, but they didn't, because again, I believe that with every client, everybody who writes, her Iyanla writes and does meet with them beforehand and says, what is your intention? What do you want to do? And then focuses on that and meets the client's intention, request, as opposed to driving her own agenda, because then you're not listening to your client. I think what was wonderful about part of this holding accountable of the parent, I love what Iyanla said. She said, love your mother enough to tell her the truth and expect higher of her, because where there's no truth telling, people play roles in interacting with each other, and there is no real authentic relationship. And this came from when Iyanla asked Luenelle if her mom was a bad mom, and her answer was no. And she said, is your mom a good person? And her answer was, and so she said, okay, then love her enough to tell the truth. And I thought, man, telling the truth is love. And telling the truth in love is love. And it's very important to tell people the truth. They might not like you when you tell them the truth. They might reject you when you tell them the truth. But honestly, as the Bible says, tell the truth in love, live in truth in love. When you don't tell the truth and when you aren't honest with people, you really are not being loving, and you are keeping them from having an opportunity to make an adjustment and live at a higher vibration and live in a higher way of being and course correcting for themselves. If you don't tell them what your grievances are with them, if you don't tell them the truth about why they're not a good mother or father, why they are not a kind mother or father, you are keeping them from growing, and you're keeping them from that opportunity of potentially living a completely different life, healed life, an informed life, and an aware life from now going forward for themselves. That is about it for this week. Thank you again for tuning in. I really appreciate you for continuing to come back to this channel and have a powwow with me about what happened on the episode. Tell me down below what your thoughts are, and let's have a conversation. I will see you again next time. Thank you for tuning in. If you have not subscribed and you keep coming back, please consider subscribing if you feel so. It's free 99. And also hit that notifications bell so that every time I do upload something here on the channel, you are notified and you are the first to know. Please like, please share, please comment down below. Again, I gotta go. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Bye.